Hi, today I want to talk to you guys about beer clarity. One of the things that I like about brewing beer, or whenever I'm brewing, is whenever I brew beer and once you serve it, that the liquid is clear. If I start seeing a bunch of haze in it, whether it comes from yeast or proteins, it kind of looks a little awkward, and you don't really want to do that. So I started looking into what makes beer clear, how what are some of the things that create haziness to begin with. Now, the Brew Your Own magazine, November of 2010 issue, they ran an experiment on Irish moss, and they posed a question that I actually became quite intrigued with, and that was basically, what does Irish moss do? And they were asking okay, well, Irish moss does help to clear up beer, but are there any other effects besides removing some of these haze-producing proteins or whatever? And surprisingly, there appear to be some side effects. They say in here that although Irish moss does help clear up beer, the difference between the treated and untreated beers was not very large. Also, further down, they say head retention may be diminished by the use of Irish moss, although the fining agent, they're talking about Werflock, did not reduce the volume of foam greatly. So they're saying that Irish moss may be having an effect on your foam, your head formation and retention, and mostly it's because what Irish moss does is it coagulates proteins, and it just basically makes them drop out of suspension. And some of these proteins, there's some of them are critical for your head formation, and that's kind of where the whole thing begins. Now, there's a book called New Brewing Lager Beer by Gregory J. Noonan. It's a really good book. And in here, when he's talking about using Finings or anything to clear up the beer, he actually states at the very beginning that finning actually improves head retention. However, there's another place on the next page where he talks about if strong hop aroma is desired in lager, liquid hop extract may be added with the gelatin finnings or before other treatments. So basically what I get out of this is that some of your finnings, gelatin and stuff like that, can actually have an effect on flavor and aroma. So when you're using some of these agents to clear up your beer, you may want to be careful about what effects it's going to have on it other than just clearing out your beer. So when I looked into all this, I was like, okay, well, what if I just focus on process and worry about lautering, recirculating my wort well enough while I'm lautering, so that I leave all the starches in my mash tun and I just get clear wort out. Focus on the boil. If you boil, it's not strong enough, you're not going to be coagulating some proteins, which may be causing some of your haze. And there's other things like your water treatment. There's a great book by Chris White and Jamil Sainichev, Yeast. I'm pretty sure you guys have heard of it. They talk about calcium, which plays a key role in yeast cell flocculation. So if you're using a yeast strain that's not very flocculent, and on top of that you don't treat your water, doesn't have enough calcium, then you may be seeing some of these yeast cells floating around your beer and stuff, which is another sort of haze. So when you start taking all of these things into consideration, just put them all together and focus on good brewing practices, focus on water treatment and everything else. I start asking, okay, do you really need all these finnings or Irish moss to brew a clear beer? And I was like, okay, I'm going to brew a beer and just focus on doing everything good enough, or actually doing everything really well, so that I get a clear beer regardless of whether or not I'm using any Irish moss or finnings. So I went for a light lager beer, something where I can be certain to see any mistakes that I may have done. And I'm about to see if this actually can happen. So this is an extremely pale beer, and it looks extremely clear to me. And I did not use any Irish moss or any types of finnings. So I think that it's possible to brew a clear beer without having to resort to any of these other agents. And that doesn't mean that I'm not ever going to use them, because there are going to be some recipes that may call for adjuncts or other ingredients, or maybe I'm using a yeast strain that when you're harvesting yeast, you may be harvesting less flocculent yeast depending on the time that you're harvesting the yeast, and if you're repitching that yeast, you know, there's going to be times where some of these agents may actually come in handy, but you have to think about some of the consequences that they may have aside from giving you a clear beer. So I don't know how good of a job is the video camera doing at showing how clear this beer is, but if you take my word for it, it's pretty clear. So I don't know. Like I said, I think that focusing on good brewing practices and making sure you treat your water right and all of that, that you can actually brew a clear beer without having to resort to any kind of filtering or stuff like that. And obviously there's going to be exceptions depending on your recipe if you're using ingredients that just cause a lot of haziness on beer, if you're dry hopping and stuff like that. So that may be a time when you may want to use, but keep in mind that some of these agents may have other effects besides just clearing the beer. So anyways, let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any other tips, techniques maybe that you use to brew a clear beer without resorting to any of these agents, or maybe if you have a different experience, you know, let me know. I'm always trying to find out. I usually read about stuff, go try it out, and change my mind about the way things are pretty much every day, just because brewing just seems like it's an ever evolving hobby. I mean, you get new practice in malting and stuff like that takes all kinds of old school principles, and it makes them almost obsolete. So let me know what you think. Post any comments in the section below, and I guess I'll see you guys in the next video. Cheers.
Just randomly combine caramel, malt, hops, and you're fine.
Let's do it.
All right, that's that.
We'll see. We're missing two.